بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. الأخوة الأحباب متابعي قناة نذر السماء والأرض، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. في الأيام السابقة أيقن الكثير من العرب والمسلمون أن فيروس كورونا ليس بالخطير كما تروج له آلة الإعلام، آلة غسيل العقول. ثم ظهرت مقابلة مع الطبيب الأمريكي المشهور رشيد بطار على التلفزيون الأمريكي يشرح فيها بالدليل المؤامرة الصحية خلف وباء كورونا. وقام فريق قناة مركز دراسات الواقع والتاريخ بترجمة هذا اللقاء الذي ستشاهدونه الآن. لكن لكي تكتمل الصورة يجب عليك أن تستمع لما قاله الشيخ المصري عبد الحميد كشك عام 1977 عن الصهيونية بداية من عصر الخلفاء الراشدين، وبعدها سيبدأ مقطع الطبيب رشيد بطار. ألقاكم بعد المقطعين.
اسمعوا تاريخكم وافيقوا لما يدور حولكم. يقول المستر جلادستون في مجلس العموم البريطاني وفي أواخر القرن 19 الميلادي: أيها الأعضاء، لن نستطيع القضاء على الإسلام إلا إذا قضينا على 3 أركان. الركن الأول هذا المصحف. وأخرج المصحف من جيبه ورفعه بيده أمام الأعضاء، فقام عضو من مجلس العموم كأنه أصيب بحمى الهستيريا وخطف المصحف من رئيس الوزراء البريطاني ومزق المصحف أمام الأعضاء. فقال المستر جلادستون: أيها العضو الأحمق، ما أردت تمزيق أوراقه، إنما أردت تمزيق آياته من صدور المسلمين. الركن الثاني بعد المصحف القضاء على صلاة الجمعة. أمر عجيب. ثم ماذا؟ قال: ثم المسجد الحرام. مصحف وجمعة ومسجد وعرفات. اقرأوا التاريخ. كان الجيش الإسرائيلي منذ حولين 2 يهدم بيوت المسلمين في مدينة الخليل، فقالت امرأة لقائد الجند: لا تهدم بيتي لأنني متوجهة لأداء فريضة الحج في البيت الحرام. قال لها: أخبري أهل مكة بأن إسرائيل في طريقها لاحتلال البيت الحرام الذي بناه جدنا إبراهيم. اقرأوا التاريخ. إنها جمعية سرية برئاسة عبد الله بن سبأ اليهودي الذي تظاهر بالإسلام أيام عمر بن الخطاب، وكون جمعية سرية قتلت عمر وهو يصلي الفجر، وهي التي قتلت عثمان بن عفان وهو يقرأ القرآن بعد الفجر. دخلوا على عثمان وهو يقرأ القرآن فذبحوه على المصحف، وقد رأى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قبل أن يستشهد، رآه في المنام وكان عثمان صائما. يا عثمان، إن شئت حميناك بإذن من الله، وإن شئت أفطرت اليوم عندنا. فقال عثمان: بل أفطر عندكم اليوم يا رسول الله. وهجموا على البيت، قيدوه وقطعوا الرأس الشريف، وطلب منهم شربة ماء قبل أن يقضى عليه فحرموه شربة الماء. إنها جمعية عبد الله بن سبأ، إنها الصهيونية العالمية التي قتلت عثمان في داره، هي التي قتلت علي بن أبي طالب في مدينة الكوفة وهو يصلي الفجر، كما قتلت عمر في نفس الزمان.
The information presented in this video is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease and has not been evaluated by the FDA. Please consult your physician before starting any medical regimen. Oh yes, my friends, we have another exclusive interview for you today. One that you will need to share to the four corners of the earth, because we're going to be asking questions and bringing you information that the mainstream media is absolutely ignoring. An emergency doctor blasting Bill Gates, the fake pandemic numbers, now in question as the economy collapses. Rashid Buttar, he graduated from Washington University with a double major in biology and theology before attending medical school at the University of Osteopathic Medicine and Health Sciences College of Medicine and Surgery. He trained in general surgery and emergency medicine and served as brigade surgeon and director of emergency medicine while serving in the U.S. Army. He has been ranked as one of the top 50 doctors in the United States. His first book, The 9 Steps to Keep the Doctor Away, became a Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and Amazon bestseller, and is now an international best-selling book translated into multiple languages. Now this week, a video he made called out the fraud that is being perpetuated across the world by the World Health Organization, the CDC, Bill Gates, the deep state, the mainstream media. It went viral with millions of views worldwide. Doctor, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it.
Now, 3 weeks ago, you called this a conspiracy. You called out the hysteria being perpetuated to scare the world population based on false data. Now, it was Jerome Adams this week, the Surgeon General, and the Trump administration who agreed with you when they announced that they had dropped the World Health Organization and the CDC model and are now working with real numbers. Okay, this is directly from the White House. This is the Office of the Press Secretary. Now, Tuesday, the White House putting out this press release demanding accountability from the World Health Organization and committed to investigating the response, the false claims, and the cover-up. So explain to our viewers what led you to this discovery and how the numbers never supported their claims.
Well, Gary, basically, I have patients from all over the world, and patients were concerned about this, and they asked, and I put out in social media that, look, if you really want to know, I'll make a video about this. And I expected some people to respond. I had, 700-800 responses. Just yes, please get us the information. So I asked the question, because you're hearing stuff about conspiracy. So those videos that we put out were actually asking the question, COVID-19 conspiracy ? And as I started looking at it, to me, it just didn't make any sense anyway. We deal with the hardest to deal with medical conditions anyway. So it wasn't a big deal. I just remembered that when I heard about the coronavirus aspect, there was one particular component that we used intravenously a lot in our clinic, and I just made sure that we had 10 times the normal amount, and that was it. It wasn't a big deal. It didn't bother me. However, as I started looking at this information, and as I started seeing that this is actually a chimeric version, something that was developed here in the United States in 2015, it was published in Nature magazine, that it was developed in the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, where all the initial studies were done. The chimeric research, despite having a moratorium by the US government to prevent any chimeric research, by the way, just so your audience understands, chimeric research basically means that they're taking a naturally occurring substance or virus, in this case, and then mutating it, genetically modifying it, changing the configuration morphologically to gain function. It's called a gain of function study or gain of function research. And that basically means that they're making something that already may have some potential to cause harm, making it more harmful, making it more virulent, making it more resistant. And basically that's what I found, that they took the SHC014 strain of the coronavirus, the surface antigen component, and brought in the backbone from the SARS coronavirus, put them together, and then inserted HIV and MERS orthologs on top of it to make a more virulent, more detrimental virus. Now, the thing is that
if I could jump in for just a moment here, because what I think you're talking about is the moratorium that was placed, and then $3.7 million from the National Institute of Health was transferred to China so they could continue this research, even though the moratorium. So they basically outsourced this research to China. Is this the same topic we're talking about here? This news is just breaking?
Yes, this is exactly right. So it goes back to 2014. The U.S. government decided, based upon certain virologists at that time, saying that, look, there's no justification for this kind of research. There's a potential for it to cause harm, cause a pandemic. So there's no justification for us to do this type of research. So the government passed a moratorium in 2014. Fauci approved approved budgets to be monies to be section for this type of research. So basically, and I'm getting really, every time I think about this, it gets me really flustered because I'm so angry that he basically broke the law. He more than broke the law. He created this entire cascade that we're seeing with the world shutdown was created by this initial aspect back in 2015. He broke the law. He went against government moratoriums. He took taxpayer money and he funded research that has now led to the COVID-19. In 2017, he was documented at Georgetown University saying that there will be a pandemic that this presidency will face, that this term will face. How did he know that in 2017 that something was going to happen in 2018, 19, or 2020? You can't predict the market from 3 days from today, what's going to happen. How did he know that there was going to be a pandemic? He stated the president of this president will face a pandemic. The exact quotes, I don't want to say the exact words. You guys have the video footage. My point is that when somebody starts making these type of statements, and then they were involved with the breaking of the law to fund the research that American taxpayers paid for, that then goes to Wuhan and now trying to create this diversion and say that it was China. God, I don't know whether it came from China or released in China, whether it was already released here. It's irrelevant. The complicity of what's going on right now, whether it was released in China or whether it was already here or however it happened, the U.S. system has condoned it, has jumped on it. They're opportunistic. They're shutting down the economy when they know, in fact, that there's no basis. I mean, there's no virus that leaves 6 feet or 12 feet. Now they're saying 13 feet. Complete misinformation. And I'm sorry that you've pulled the chain on me right now, but the mainstream media, when the Surgeon General came out and said that basically the Gates model, the Fauci model, the World Health Organization model was not going to be followed anymore, and they were going to look at the actual data, the actual numbers, the mainstream media didn't respond at all. All they said was, it seems like we're going to be going to 2022 before people can assemble together. That's what ABC put out. And Fox, or was it New York Post put out, it seems like that the 6 feet of social distancing is not going to be sufficient. It needs to go to 13 feet. There is no virus, bacteria that jumps 13 feet. It defies every logical aspect of science and medicine. And what really, really pisses me off is that there are thousands, tens of thousands of doctors and scientists out there that know that this is a fraud, and they're not saying anything. Either one, they're scared of social ostracization because they're going to be called out, or social shaming, or they're afraid of that they're going to lose their license. For God's sake, this is changing the planet, and every scientist and every doctor that knows this to be a facade needs to open their mouth and speak. There is every aspect of science has just been literally picked up, thrown in the toilet and flushed down. It's like everybody's ignoring it. The fundamental aspects of how the human system works is being ignored. Physiology is being just put in the garbage bin. Every aspect of virology and infectious disease is being ignored. Koch's postulate has been ignored. Every aspect. Then you've got false positives coming from testing that we know is not adequate, and then the testing that they are doing, like the RT-PCR, the real-time polymerase chain reaction testing, that's already been shown. It was actually the guy who developed it in the 1980s, Mullis, said that you cannot use this testing for diagnostic purposes. You have to use it only for the where something has a genomic sequence that's already been identified. You can't use it for diagnosis, yet they're using it for diagnosis. And when that's not enough to justify the number of deaths that they've created this pandemic for, they're causing doctors and nurses to go back and change the death certificates to say COVID-19 is the first cause of death. And if that's not enough, now their mandates being sent to every state, every doctor from every state medical board saying that there's no necessity to test. I got a letter like this myself. If they have symptoms, send them home. And then the mandate of listing the cause of death is COVID-19. The media propagating footage of hospitals and from one country to another country using the same footage, the same person dying multiple times, use of mannequins to show that the people are dying, and yet they can't even show ambulances that are doing anything. They're all parked. They're all sitting there. People are playing chess. They're playing card games because they're so idle. Nurses are being laid off right now because there's not enough work. But they're pushing this agenda of fear, fear, fear. The fear mongering itself will increase your adrenal output, will cause more stress, more emotional distraught. The emotional aspect, one side, now you're talking about the financial aspect. People are going to get stressed. Guess what that does? It reduces your immune system and makes you susceptible to viruses, bacteria, to many other things. But then to create this illusion over something like COVID-19, which nobody has yet demonstrated a single death from the actual virus, from the proper, established, accepted methodology that a virus has caused this death. Nobody's been able to do that. It's all based upon PCR testing. And Gary, I don't know whether you know this or not, all the way back to 1984, all the way up to now, 2018, there are multiple studies that show that if you've had the flu shot, especially the trivalent flu shot, false positives on COVID-19 testing. God knows what's been injected into people over the years. They really want to know cause of death. I want to know how many of these people that are supposedly died from COVID-19, which, by the way, still the numbers are less than the seasonal flu. The number of deaths are still less than the seasonal flu. But I want to know how many of these people that died of supposed COVID-19 actually had a history of a vaccination, an adult vaccination in the last 10 years. That's what I want to know, because the studies clearly show that if you've had a flu shot, you're going to test positive for COVID-19. So you got all this other stuff that's going on. They can't justify the numbers, so they're going to change the death certificates. They can't justify the numbers, so they're going to take different footage of different people and then attribute that to COVID-19. They just had, CBS had that nurse that was crying, saying, please give me a face mask so that I can take care of people, and I don't want to risk my family getting them infected. And then they find out that hasn't worked in a hospital in a year and a half, and she's some kind of a social media model. The amount of misrepresentation, deception, diversion tactics to keep the public from knowing the truth, it's just unbelievable. I cannot believe.
So let's take it back to what you said at the beginning of this fascinating statement you just made. I mean, I'm blown away, and our viewers are right now. But so we're going to take this back. Is Fauci directly responsible for this pandemic because he maneuvered the money, he maneuvered around the moratorium, kept this chimeric research going in China? Is he directly responsible for not just the pandemic, but also the response that's killed the economy, put 17 to 22 million people out of work? Is Fauci directly responsible?
I'm going to say this. I think that I've seen some petitions going around. I know Dr. Shiva said that Fauci should be fired. I think that's the nicest thing that could be done to Fauci. I think he's a criminal. He's broken the law. He's gone against the government. I mean, to me, that seems like it's a traitorous thing to do when the government has passed a regulation and he's at one of the highest levels in the NIH. He's got a directorship at the NIH, and then he breaks the law. He breaks the moratorium, and then funds research against something that could potentially cause harm throughout the entire world, and he's in collusion with a foreign government to do. I mean, I don't know. That's a matter for attorneys to decide. But I'll tell you something. Fauci goes back to 1981. In 1981, he called HIV/AIDS the gay disease, and he was the one who funded the research behind a drug 3 years before it was even established that there was a real virus. So the virus was established in 1984. In 1981, he was pushing the agenda of a drug prophylactically to treat people for a condition that has now been seen to be related to lifestyle, nutritional status, all sorts of other things. He was pushing the agenda to push a drug that caused so much harm as a prophylactic, just to prevent HIV. Now, this goes back 1981. We're talking 39 years. This guy has a history of pushing an agenda. Here's a question that I want to ask you, Gary. Forget about the audience for a second. I just want to ask you a logical question. So here's the president, regardless of whether you are for the president or against the president, forget about that. The man is elected. He's the president of the United States, and it is our responsibility as citizens to follow the directive of our commander-in-chief. Whether you agree or disagree, that he went through the process, he got elected. So get off that bandwagon, people, and stop making a big deal between the Democrats and Republicans. He's a president. He deserves our support. But now the president comes out and says there's a drug called hydroxychloroquine, which has been on the market for God knows 50, 60, 70 years, and another drug, Zithromax, which has been, it's a macrolide that's been around for at least, that class of drugs has been around for at least 70, 80 years. Maybe Zithromax has been around for I don't know, 20 years, whatever the case is. These are established drugs. They're safe drugs. Using them in combination, they're doctors that have shown at least 99% efficacy. They've shown hundreds and hundreds of patients they've treated. Nobody's died. Symptoms resolve within an hour, hour and a half to a day and a half, 2 days. Okay, so you've got this class. The president brings it out. And Fauci says, get this, Fauci says, unless there's some studies to show that, it should not be used. Yet he's promoting a vaccine that we have no idea what the hell that's going to do. And he's saying that's okay to use? I mean, if that does not show a conflict of interest, I don't know what does. People need to wake up and realize there is a massive criminal component to this. This entire world economy, the whole world economy shutting down, it comes back to one person, in my opinion, and that's Fauci. Now, there's other people that are involved with the charade, obviously, but Fauci is the person that they put up in the front, and Fauci is the one who had the ability to stop this. Fauci has told a friend of mine, Judy Mikowitz, who I was doing an interview with just about an hour earlier, she went to jail and spent 5 years. She was threatened by Fauci 10 years ago when she came out to say that the viral studies and the research that she had done, and she was in charge of doing the research in Ebola to make it more virulent. The gain of function studies on Ebola, she was responsible for that. When she realized the stuff that she had developed and the stuff that she was researching was being used for nefarious purposes, and she was going to be a whistleblower, her career was threatened, and more, her life was threatened. She refused to back down. She went forward, and guess what they did? They framed her and they put her in jail for 5 years. She's got a book that came out today, I believe it's called Plague something. Just came out today. I'm telling you right now, Fauci, it can all be traced back to Fauci, but Fauci is just one of the players. There's other people, and you can start looking at what the agenda is. It's wide open. Anybody can go in and do their own internet search. They just need to open their eyes, they need to open up their mind, and they need to be married to no decision or outcome. Just look at it for yourselves, people. You've got your brains, use your own brain, come up with your own sequence of events, how it happened, do the research, and you will, if you're following a logical sequential thought pattern, you'll come to the same conclusion. There's no way that you can come to any other conclusion. All roads lead back to the same place.
الإخوة الأحباب، شاركونا رأيكم ومقترحاتكم في التعليقات، ولا تنسوا زيارة قناة مركز دراسات الواقع والتاريخ وفريقهم المحترم الذي قام بترجمة المقطع، وسأضع لكم رابط قناتهم الثرية في وصف الفيديو. يا صديقي، أنت تعلم الكثير الآن، فمنذ أن استيقظت وأنت نهم لتعلم أكثر، ولكن لكل شيء وقته، وأنت وحدك من اخترته لتعلم الحقيقة كاملة، ولتعلم أننا عينك على تلك الحقيقة، فلا تكن أنت من يغلقها، وساعدنا بمشاركة هذا الفيديو حتى يصل إلى جميع النائمين، وكن على استعداد لمشاهدة حلقاتنا بالأسبوع القادم إن شاء الله. إلى اللقاء.